All right. Hey, you know what? Most leaders don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they were never taught how to lead when things get hard. In this episode, William C. Davis and I unpack what separates managers from true leaders and how clarity, trust, and decision making define leadership in the real world. Welcome to the Go for CEO channel, William. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, John?
Good, good. I'm excited to have you on. This is a topic. I wrote a book recently called The 4A Formula: Untangle Any Challenge and Think Like a CEO.
Hmm.
Just from some of the great interviews I've had throughout my life here on Go for CEO with you guys and gals, and then also my own experiences as an entrepreneur. But what's curious is now I'm shifting actually into something like this genre of thought leadership for my next book. So it's a perfect timing to have a guy like you, an expert in this field, and really recognize kind of what's happening in the marketplace and in our world, right? We need more leaders to lead the right way. So tell us a little bit about the background, about how you got started, what was kind of, where you built and cut your teeth from. So I'll let you share that at the beginning here.
Well, as I said we were talking earlier, I retired May of last year after 38 years in corporate America, and a lot of the reason behind that was because I was extremely frustrated with leadership that I had experienced, particularly in the last 10, 15 years. A lot to what your intro was, the fact that people who claim to be leaders don't know what they're doing. And it's again a situation where, we interchangeably use the terms boss, manager, and leader. And those are or three incredibly different dynamics of how you deal with people. And most people are stuck in that middle column, the manager, where, it's really oriented toward tasks. You got a few people who still think they can be the boss and just tell everybody to do it because I said so. But leaders are a unique character, if you will, in the fact that their emphasis is not anymore on the tasks that they are personally responsible for. Their team does that. So their responsibility changes to the development of their team and making sure their team is able to grow, able to succeed, is successful. And there's just not a lot of training going on regarding that. If you look at across corporate America, when people talk about leadership training, it's really management training, right? It's how do we get the work done? And it's really a situation where we need to step back and understand management and leadership are different, and we need to treat them as such. And we need two different specific paths of training to help people understand, what responsibilities lie within each.
Hmm. It's interesting. I've been an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur, I affectionately call it. Especially I've only really worked at corporate America in a bank,
Yeah.
and I've experienced that from a retail level to the business banking to now commercial banking, and seeing those different areas. And they say you don't leave a corporation or a company or a job because of the job necessarily. You leave it because of the person, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and that leader. So I totally vibe with that because it's interesting. The last 20 years, from my opinion at least, we've kind of grown up some softer people because life is easier, technology is better, things come to us faster. So all these things have made it a little bit softer in society. I was just listening to a podcast earlier that talked about how 150 years ago, like you had to get up and go hunt and go get something and do something, and there was no idle time, and there was purpose in that. And maybe it was gender specific, but the man went and hunted, and the woman, took care of the family and took care of the cooking and all that type of stuff, right? And a lot of things have flipped on its head nowadays. But so to stay with this route or this mindset, obviously you get all this experience throughout your career. Tell us a little bit about sometimes when you were in those positions of leadership. What did you have mentors that you aligned with? What was some of the ways that you learned about leadership?
Yeah. First I grew up on a farm. And so working with dad and my brothers, the communication was constant, right? We did the work, we worked together, we had to gel together. if one of us went rogue, if you will, or wasn't in line with everybody else, things went awry. And Dad was military, so he had a more of a rough exterior, but he was very good at explaining, very very good at helping us understand the why of what we were doing. And so then, as I moved into my career, the first two managers I had were incredibly good with the empathy side of understanding. Hey, people have lives outside of work, and it affects when things are going wrong in their lives, things tend to go bad for them at work, and they dealt with people in such a fashion where they helped them. Right? It wasn't a just you just get your mind back straight, right? It wasn't that kind of an attitude. So I saw how well that worked, and I really uh, felt like that's really the approach to take. And then I had a few managers through the course of my career that weren't that way. They were very arrogant. They were very felt like they were entitled because of successes they had had, and so I saw the negative effect of that kind of attitude. So I honed my skills, I honed my approach again more toward the servant leadership type attitude, to where I've reached a level of success. I want to give back. I want to help my people. And it's my responsibility to ensure that they succeed and do everything I can to help them. So that was really where my formulation of my attitude came. And as you mentioned, and you nailed it, the last 20 years things have changed, and it's because we've lost the art of communication. We've lost the art of building relationships. Technology is great, love it. But when cell phones, but now particularly iPhones and so forth, came into existence, and iPads, and you go out and let's just take a family, sitting at a table in a restaurant. Are they visiting, or are they all on their technology? They're all on their technology. And so when they do that within the core family unit, that then extends out to how they deal and relate with other people. And when we had the pandemic 6 years ago, that inflamed the situation, because you had a whole group of young people who were in a formative years, uh, that instead of being out there and working with people and interacting with people, they were stuck at home. And so how did they communicate? Text, email, whatever. And so the ability to genuinely build relationships and be able to work with people and understand body emotions and attitudes and so forth, and how to deal with them, that's been lost. And so I think that's one of the challenges that we're having.
Hmm. It reminds me, right, when you're talking to people, even that the tone of voice,
Yeah.
right? Excitement, get into it,
Yeah.
or the kind of
Yeah.
melancholy,
Yeah.
cerebral, approach. Each one has an effect
Yeah.
on how we kind of approach that situation. If someone's scurrying and oh, I got, like even starting this podcast, right? Like I was a little bit late, all
Yeah.
that stuff,
Yeah.
it could add to a little bit of
Yeah.
anxiety in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And obviously that lends itself to leadership. I want to go back a little bit, only because I think it's interesting, and hopefully the GoFCO community can learn from this. In those moments where you had that ladder, or I'm sorry, the second type of leader,
Mhm.
the not so good one. What were some things that you were doing and learning to do to kind of be in that moment? Did you take more ownership at that time? Did you read a couple books? Did you lean on a mentor to kind of get you through those times? Or did you say, all right, I'm jetting out. I don't like this leader. I'm moving to another, division or business or something like that. What were some of your ways that you dealt with that?
Well, I didn't leave because that wasn't my makeup. I didn't want to leave the people I worked with, right, to be subjected to that. So what I tried to do was not, I don't want to say circumvent them, but I wanted to be that resource for the rest of the team that they felt comfortable that they could come to. and then I would take ownership of dealing with the manager or the quote unquote leader that had the attitude issues. And so I tried to insulate them, the rest of the team, even though I wasn't the leader per se, from what was going on, and I'd be kind of like the spokesman. So I did that based upon some advice I got that was given to me that basically said, when you're faced with a bad leader, be the one that can be the buffer, right? And I felt like that was probably a really good approach because it limited the impact that they had negatively on the work that we were doing and on the people that we had. And we did have people that said, hey, if I have to keep dealing with this person, I'm gone. Well, these were talented people. I mean, very talented people, very smart people. And the negative effects of them leaving would have been, dramatic.
Hmm. And were these bigger companies, mid-sized companies, smaller? What was the dynamic?
Yeah. One of them was one of the largest financial institutions in the United States.
Hmm.
So it was, I had been there almost 25, I was there almost 25 years. So I saw the gamut of attitudes and so forth, and you talk about stress. I mean, financial institutions, you've been in the financial industry, one quarter can turn people's attitude from high and happy to, the world's falling, right? So, it was a situation where we were on the road a lot because of the type of work that we were doing, and when you're on the road with people who are not pleasant and they're your superiors, that can just make life miserable.
Yeah, undoubtedly. It's hard to get up in the morning in that
Yeah,
sense,
yeah,
or stick around for extra work, right?
right.
Because you got to put in the effort.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. And I guess, one of the things that would be curious to me and maybe to our audience is, okay, so you decided, hey, I'm going to be the buffer, right? And that, helped you throughout your career because it sounds like now that you've retired, you've captured so many great things from those first leaders in your life, from this experience of being a buffer per se, right? Kind of
Mm,
that oil, that grease that greases the wheel per se, right? When it's squeaking from a bad leader.
yeah.
But where are some things that you could share with us today that you also implement in your current business of going into corporations and companies? Are you suggesting certain books? Are you suggesting certain methodologies? So do you use your certain systems or rhythms in the way that you
Mhm.
teach it?
Yeah. Well, I've written a couple of books. When I retired, I did kind of a brain dump of things that I had learned that I thought were critically important as far as setting the foundation for leadership. One was a book that talked about the difference between being a boss, a manager, and a leader. And it talks about in a lot of different scenarios what's the difference and why leadership is preferential and how you get there. The second book I wrote was about what I consider the most critical aspect of being a great leader, and it's building genuine relationships. And I was very careful in the title of that book because it's genuine relationships, not just relationships. Because people can tell whether you're invested in them or not. People can tell when you're sincere or not. And if you're not sincere, if you're not invested in them, that relationship building is going to fail, and that relationship effect is going to fail also. So the philosophy that I bring to people is, look, the first thing you've got to understand as a leader is, why am I wanting to be a leader? Because if you're wanting to be a leader because of the pay, because of the title, because of the perceived power, you're not going to long term be successful. It's just that philosophy is not going to work. So understanding why I want to be a leader, because it's got to be for the right reason. It's got to be because I want to help people succeed. One of the greatest accomplishments I classify in my career is the success of my people, even if that meant they passed me up in the same organization that we were in. Because to me, that meant that I allowed them to grow and to live their dreams, succeed in what they wanted to do. And I still have relationships with a lot of people that I led through the years, and incredibly proud of them because of where they're at. And so part of the challenge that I see is many leaders, quote unquote leaders, view their team as competition. And so when somebody on their team starts having success, what's the natural instinct? Oh, I've got to either get out in front of them or I've got to do something to bring them back down to earth. And that's, again, that's not the attitude. Your position as a leader is to help your people succeed because long term, you're not going to be there forever, right? And so you're training successors. You're training people that are going to lead this company or whatever into the next generation.
And I love the thought that a great leader has a great bench,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
you're always
Yeah.
developing people. When I first got into banking, I had a regional manager in an opposite team that I would hear their people or his people say, "Hey, yeah, he's good to me. I like our dynamic, but man, when I go to apply for the next level,
Yeah.
very negative."
Very
So
negative. Yeah.
while you're in his team, while you're in his circle, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
But when you go to the next level, he's not very supportive. So
Yeah.
that shares something with you about that person, right? Uh,
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
remember, either my own business or being inside the bank, I've always loved what you just said earlier. And the relationships stick because these people realize like, hey, you were a component of that success that now they're having 5, 10, 15 years from now. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. So do you want to say something?
No, I'm agreeing with you because yeah, it is. It's a fulfillment. I mean, right? I feel fulfilled because of the success that they've had.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So let's get into the business of William C. Davis, right? Like, obviously, you hang your hat on quote unquote retirement, but do
Yeah.
we all, as winners, really retire? I always
Yeah.
tell my wife, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to ever retire, quote unquote. Like, I think retirement is okay, well, hey, I want to do this for the next 3 days, and nobody can tell me what I want to do because I have the money, I have the time, and I have the ability to do it.
Yeah.
That's retirement to me.
Yeah.
So now you're in this position of being able to educate and lead going into companies. What are some of the ways that you're marketing the business? And once you get in, what's some of the ways that you have standard operating procedures? Do you have discovery meetings with these people? Do you have whiteboard sessions? Tell us a little bit about the business of William C. Davis.
So it has been an interesting journey, John. I kind of started this cold in May, not knowing what I was doing. And so, I, built the website and worked with a number of people to help get that done and running successfully. And then I've worked with several agents, publicity and speaking agents to try to kind of hone the direction that I'm going. So I do a lot of speaking, keynote speaking, do workshops along all aspects of leadership, whether it's this building genuine relationships or it's, learning about emotional intelligence, which is something that has really started gaining traction in the last few years. Um, I've written a couple of books and I plan to start a third one this year that kind of continues the thought process of what's important in your leadership journey. But then when someone comes to me and wants to, work with me, I listen, right? Because oftentimes what they think is the path that we need to go down to help get them where they want to be, uh, maybe is not necessarily the right one. So to your point, whiteboarding is a great exercise. Let's put up your perceived issue of what it is. Give me some characteristics that brought you to that point, and then let's just talk about it. And what I've learned very quickly is not necessarily what they are saying, but the thought process that brought them to that point is where you really gain the nuggets of, okay, what direction do we go to try to help them, get to be where they want? Because, they might think that there's team chemistry, right? That's awry. Well, once you kind of peel back the onion, it may not be team chemistry, but it may be a member of the team chemistry, right? And that's a different, you approach that totally differently than if it's a, total team chemistry issue. So to me, the most important thing is listening to the challenge that they have, and help them explain to me how their thought process got them there. Because again, you get a lot of nuggets out of that.
Okay, so a lot of discovery, a lot of
Yeah.
maybe interviewing, right?
Yes,
As
sir.
like
Yes.
your process is. Now, do you get a lot of companies that the head person, founder, CEO is telling you, "Hey, I need you to take care of these people that subordinate to me, and they need to be better leaders," or are you getting that person that says, "Hey, I need some help to lead my people and go to the next level"? Is there a dynamic in there? Maybe from a corporation standpoint, maybe middle management. Where are you landing right now in this expertise?
Yeah, right now a lot of it is individuals that would like to improve their leadership because they've seen my posts on LinkedIn, or they've seen videos that I've done, or even some that have been in the audience. Excuse me, that one of the speeches I've given, will reach out to me and say, "Hey, what you said really struck a chord with me. Can we sit down and talk?" And so, that is more so what I'm working on right now. Um, I've had a few larger keynotes the last few months, and I'm starting to get a little bit of traction out of those from a more corporate level. And I have a big speech in May in Toronto that the heads of 200 different corporations from around the world are going to be at. So I'm hoping maybe that will kind of catapult me into maybe dealing more with the company as a whole as opposed to just the individuals.
And are you so okay? I'm understanding. I mean, in May, you decided to kind of put your shingle up as William
Yeah.
C. Davis, the company. You obviously had some insights or maybe some connections for keynote speaking because that's not an easy realm to break into. So let's talk about that because maybe that would be some great value. You put up your shingle, your William C. Davis Incorporated, and the first thing it sounds like you've really done well is you wrote a couple books. You put that your heart soul into that, what you were just learned for 30 something years, and then you go out into the marketplace to do keynotes. So what was that like? Who did you network with? Did you start just putting, maybe a one pager out there for a speaking keynote, advertisement? What was that for you?
I worked with a group called the Speaker Lab, and Grant is a great guy. His team's great, and they did a lot of work to help me build my website and to accumulate lists of organizations that I could focus on reaching out to that kind of fit the niche that I was trying to concentrate on. And then I hired a publicist to begin getting me on podcasts, and she just has done a magnificent job. I did from May until today. I've done probably 40 podcasts, and like yourself, I mean they're very good, knowledgeable people that are running the show that can understand their audience and understand what needs to be discussed. And so the feedback from those helps generate some interest. And what I found is, a podcast that I may have been on 6 months ago, I'm just now hearing from somebody about it because either they just heard about it or they're just in a position now where they could do something. But then I signed on with an agent, a speaking agent, in November, because as you mentioned, I mean, keynote speaking world is a bear to get into. If you don't have name recognition, if you don't have connections, that's a very difficult place to start getting into. And she has been in the business for 30 years. And so she has done an excellent job of helping me reach out to people that can have interest on a consistent basis and has opened some doors for me. Now, what I have found out though is you got to be ahead of the curve because a lot of these places they're, booking keynote speakers 6 to 12 months in advance. So, when in November, October, I was looking for, things to do in January and February, people were like, man, I got 2027. So it's like, oh, okay. So I'm learning every day, John. I'm learning every day.
Yeah. Well, and there's an operating rhythm to everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Every industry has its little nuances, and I love that you said that, right? You went out and spent money
Yeah.
from the website to the publicist to this agent.
Yeah.
I'm sure none of them are free,
No.
uh, and you got to invest, and that's a big deal, Code for SEAL community, especially in this scenario where you've kind of gone from employee to quote unquote retirement, and now you
Yeah.
want to hang a shingle of you're your own business. You've got to invest into the next level. And there's some complexity in the sense of learning, how to trade hours for dollars, right? And an employee mindset to the entrepreneur mindset, and maybe that independent contractor to business owner mindset. So I know you're kind of getting through, and it's been a warp speed, almost 9, 10 months here. So congrats to you and
Thanks.
that battle.
Well, and to your point, it's all about the return on the investment, right? You're investing in yourself when you become an entrepreneur. You're betting on yourself, and it takes money to put yourself in a position to succeed. Now, obviously, you can determine how much money that's going to be, and then formulate your plan based upon that. But it's going to, you're showing confidence in yourself, your abilities, and the business plan that you have. Because if you don't believe in it, you can throw money at it all day and it's not going to succeed.
Yeah, no doubt. So in the author sense, what was your mechanism? Did you had brain dumped, you said earlier in the conversation, and that was kind of maybe an immediate reaction to now having a little bit more time and
You
thought, process to it. But that brain dump, did you use any tools? Were you able to, let's say, use an AI tool, or
Oh
did
yeah,
you write
yeah.
out everything and then formulaically find out how to put it on Amazon and this and that? What was that process for you?
So I did the brain dump and I just used Microsoft Word, right, to kind of formulate the thoughts and the order and all that. And then I used, I believe it was Grammarly, as a tool to then help, organize it and ensure that the structure was correct. And it offered me a lot of suggestions of how to change things to, be more pleasing in regards to thought process. And
Mm,
so it was a great tool to use, and I still use it today. Um, but then publishing is an interesting world. Don't know anything about it. That was one thing I didn't spend money on was a book publisher, and so Amazon has some software called KDP, which
mhm.
actually puts the book in the format that allows you to be able to read it on a Kindle or online. So I used that and put it out as an ebook. And then luckily, that same structure you're then able to bring back into a Word document, and that can be your paperback or your hardback book also. So you don't have to do a whole lot of editing to that after you've done the KPub edition.
Okay. Okay. And ironically, I paid for it. So
Yeah.
they say, "Oh, who published you?" I'm like, "Well, I paid for the publisher, right?" So I didn't have the street cred of Penguin or someone coming to knock on my door to be an author. But
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it is you've taken all this knowledge. I took this knowledge and I shared it with people now. It's funny, right? As an author now, we're authors. We could tell people, "Hey, you have a book in you." And it's so true. I think everybody has some sort of story to tell,
Yeah.
something, and it was really cool to be in the U.S. Library of Congress, being
Hmm. Yeah.
actually official, and God forever as long as the United States lives on.
Yeah.
Uh, Kind of cool to know that you have something there that somebody like this podcast, right? Everything that you build in that scenario is evergreen,
Yeah.
right? And and,
Yeah.
and I always feel like maybe one day, 200 years from now somebody will pick up a William C. Davis book and really learn from it and get some value out of it. So I don't know if you felt that kind of legacy scenario.
Oh yeah, the first time I got the letter in the mail from the Library of Congress with the certificate, right? It's like, oh man, it's just,
Yeah, cool.
oh, what do I do with this? Do I frame it? What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. So look, obviously you're in this infancy stage of this consulting leadership business, mostly doing, some keynotes. Is that kind of where most of the revenue comes from right now?
Yes, and I'm going to be real honest with you, John. I have been incredibly blessed throughout my career.
Mhm.
So, obviously I have fee structures, based upon what I do and so forth, but I've never made a decision on what I'm going to do for someone based upon whether they can pay or not.
Mhm.
It's just, to me, it would be kind of hypocritical. Just for me, it'd be hypocritical if I'm saying I want to help you, but I'm not going to help you unless you pay me. So I've been very I don't want to say lax. I've just been very soft in that being a tight requirement, right? If somebody comes to me and says we only have X amount of dollars, I'm like, okay, fine, we'll do it, right?
Mhm.
Because again, to me, it's about the giving back. It's not about making a career. If I still needed the income, on a weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever, I'd have never left the corporate world.
Mhm.
So it was a very strategic decision my wife and I made that, hey, we can do this. We can afford to do this. Let's do it. And so, financially, it's not been anything, astronomical. It really has not been a whole lot at this point. But again, that's why I've never been frantic about what's happened or what hasn't happened. I knew it's a process, and I'm just going to take it slow, and I'm going to try to do it right as opposed to just, do something.
No, I mean, look, and that's an extraordinary position, right? Not
Yeah,
everybody's in that
right.
scenario.
Yeah.
You obviously did well throughout your life and saved up enough to
Yeah.
then maybe you didn't know for sure that you were going to do this, but now
No.
that you have the opportunity to do this, you're in a different position than a competitor that's
Right.
teaching the same, theories or thoughts or philosophies, right? And maybe they're looking more desperate at
Yeah.
times. You can come in and really take the time
Yeah.
because you've set yourself up. But I think that's inspiring to people, right? So if Go for Shield community, if you're at a stage in your career where maybe you made millions or you had a great nice exit of a business or you in corporate America long enough that you built up a nice 401k, whatever it might
Mhm.
be, that you made some right decisions, that money is not the driver. Now, purpose and giving back and like William said, that side of things, man, what a great position to be in, right?
Oh, it is. I mean, incredibly blessed. And, I wake up every day. I'll tell you, what's funny? Um, I actually wake up earlier in the morning every day now than I ever did when I was working in corporate America. Because I'm just, I'm relaxed. I know what my day is. I know I'm in control of it. I can make it successful or I'll make it, unsuccessful. And so I go about every day just, man, this is great. I wish I could have done this, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, there's this purpose,
Yeah.
right, that you've self-discovered, and when you're in the heat of the moment of that company or anybody that you've done some consulting and leadership for, God, your energy probably flows,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
increased that day, and you get home and you're jolly, and your wife's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And you're like, "I just helped another business owner. I helped another person realize what true leadership is." So that's the igniter. So that's really cool to hear.
Well, and the other neat thing about this is, she's retired also. And
Okay.
so we travel together. So if I go somewhere to speak or I go somewhere to do, a workshop or whatever, she comes with me. And I told her that when we started this, I said, look, this is not going to just be me. This can be us. This is going to be our opportunity to spend more time together because I traveled so much through so much of our 40-year marriage and just get to experience things. So if we go somewhere, I've got 2 days worth of work. We'll spend 4 days, right? And maybe just travel around the area and see places we've not seen before.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And lots to learn there. I guess the golden nugget is you treated your younger wolf well in the early years to get your older wolf to not have to be necessarily as needy or
Right.
those types of things, which a lot of business, it's always a curious dilemma, right? We want to be servants of people. We want to be able to build strategically and be patient and not have that aura of desperatism, right? But you also need to, like those of us that have to bring in the business, like you feel that urge, that urgency, right? So it's an interesting dilemma to, or dynamic to be in. So, all right. So what's next, right? The next 6 to 12 months. Sounds like you put a concise business plan. You're not necessarily stressing about it, in that sense. But what's next for you at the business? Do you see it kind of growing to an agency level, a consultancy level? Do you have some plans with any, not only the book, but maybe some platform work that you're going to do? What's your next 6 to 12 months?
Well, again, the book is, as you mentioned. The second thing that I really want to do is I've had a number of people reach out to me and say, "Do you have, a speech or do you have workshops on this topic?" Again, related to leadership. And while I don't necessarily have something formulated out, I mean, I've got notes here and there, and so there's about 5 different speeches that I've been asked about that I want to put together and then advertise on my website as, hey, this is an option, right? If this is a subject or an area that you've got issues with or concerns with, we can deal with them. So doing that, I'm expanding who I'm reaching out to as far as working with. I've been focused so much on conferences and events that I just now started really reaching out to businesses, right? Fortune 500 companies and other places around the world. I mean, that was one of the things I told my wife. I said, look, I don't want to just stick to North America. If somebody, in Australia wants me to come, I'm going to go. So I'm starting to expand out that. And I'll tell you that you were mentioning AI tools earlier. AI tools are great for helping you understand events and companies that offer or have a reputation of bringing in outside speakers and so forth. So that's a great resource. Um, uh, Chat GPT, Grok, and even DeepSeek. I don't use it much, but and then Gemini, Google Gemini. So those really help you find places based upon its ability to research the internet really quickly and see that people have brought speakers in. So those speeches, but then I've also been started reaching out to colleges and universities because uh, some of the most interaction I've had to my speeches are college students who
Hmm.
come up to me and say, you know, what you're saying about leadership is what I always thought it should be, but I've never experienced it.
Hmm.
Right. So it's like, hey, when you talk about how do we train people right, catch them early, right? And we always do business classes in college. Well, most of that is nuts and bolts type stuff. It's not the dealing with people and how do you manage situations and lead other people and so forth. So, to the extent that I can do that, I've been reaching out to those places.
Well, and it is a challenging time of understanding where education has gone the last
Yeah.
100 years, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And what are we really paying for from an education standpoint? Um, you know, in my opinion, right, the network that you get of being at a Stanford or at a UCLA or Harvard, whatever, um, that's kind of what you're paying for
Yeah.
because the education, in some respects, unless you're really identifying, I need to be a doctor, a
Right.
lawyer, and specificity.
Mhm.
Um, it's something that I encourage my daughters. I got 3 daughters, and I never actually graduated college. I've been an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur and make a good 6 figure income and like it's interesting. It's never been um, what I knew. It's always been who I knew.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I have nothing against college. My wife did; she graduated, but it's funny. She graduated with a PR degree and a minor in Spanish, and she uses none of that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Exactly.
and it never really has. So it's interesting what helps you grow in your career, or what makes you successful in whatever level of success you feel. So.
Well, and that's an interesting point that you bring up because I was talking to somebody probably about 6 months ago about teaching a class at a university, right? Well, I didn't have the level of education that was required to teach at a university. And I'm like, okay, 40 years on, dealing with that subject in the corporate world's not education. I mean, seriously?
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a hard and fast rule. No, you have to have this certain master's degree. I'm like, I'm 61. I'm not going back to get a master's just so I can teach something that I've, worked in for 40 years.
Well, and that's where maybe, some of the evolution of William C. Davis, the business, becomes, hey, maybe you do a course, right,
Yeah, yeah,
online, and you offer it for a nominal fee or
yeah.
maybe free. But I like charging only because I feel like skin in the game helps someone really
Oh yeah.
invest.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes I differ from going free, um, but I get it. It's an interesting dynamic, and certain industries have certain things that they require, right? So it's
Yeah.
interesting time. So all right, so hey, the next 6 to 12 months, it's going to be really encouraging to see kind of where you go and where you speak. Now, I'm curious this Canada speaking where it's going to be 200 influential people. So was that through the agent, and is that then? That speaking opportunity, are you then leaning that towards then, like you said, maybe there's going to be a business owner or three or
Yeah.
five or 10 that reach out to you? Is that kind of the strategy of that?
I had actually found them on my own. I had initially found them before I ever signed with my agent. So this was one I had found. Um, and it was 4 months from when I applied to when I heard back from them.
Mm,
And so, yeah, that, in talking with them, that was the, genesis of why I wanted to do it was out of that. I could then work with other companies, right? And the majority of them are not even in North America. Majority of them are in Europe and in Australia. So it's going to be fun because, again, you have to think about, in the United States, we have a certain mentality, right, regarding leadership and so forth because of our culture.
mm,
And so I now have to think, and this is part of what I'm going to be doing between now and then, is thinking about how does leadership differ based upon the culture that someone lives in. And so how do I now need to not tweak my message, but now gear my message towards more, a whole dynamic, regardless of where you live, as opposed to more of a specificity based upon being in the United States.
hmm. So let me challenge that.
Okay.
If you have a philosophy and you truly believe in it, are you saying in that scenario, that dynamic, it's about, I guess, because leadership for human beings in a certain type of scenario, wouldn't it always go true and fast to what the principle should be?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not changing the principle and I'm not changing the message. What I'm going to try to do is understand how in their culture they
Okay.
perceive it and then bring it to this is where it needs to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because
Because I think, I never really thought about that aspect before of, when I talk about building a genuine relationship and I think about it how we do it here,
Mhm,
right? Well, it may not be that same way somewhere else
mhm,
because of gender factors, right?
mhm, mhm.
So I need to understand that so then I can bring them to here and help them understand that's not a bad thing, guys. It's, yeah, you have this philosophy, but understand, you know, this is what works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense then. And I love that dialogue that we just had, is just trying to challenge, because I think sometimes, um, and I take this to a faith-based thing and what
Yeah.
have you, tolerance, right? The word has been buzzing around the last 2, 3 years. in America? Are we tolerant and around the world and stuff? And not to change the subject, but it's interesting if you have a credo, a way of doing things,
Yeah.
and if you truly believe, then you shouldn't really change it.
Nope.
But I like the way that you said is understanding maybe that culture and what are some differences, and then bringing it to the point so that they could take the 3 steps it takes to get to where you need them to
Right.
be. So
Right. Yeah.
interesting. I like that. I like
Yeah, and I love that, John, because yeah, again, my whole philosophy is based on doing to others, right? The golden rule.
that. Hmm.
We're all human. We all have the same challenges in life, maybe to varying degrees, but at the end of the day, we're all the same, and we need to treat each other with respect and caring, and do the right thing.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, we end our interviews typically with CEO, and I know you're kind of new and into this world of William C. Davis Incorporated, but I really feel like there's been a lot of, great info and great strategy and thoughts that you shared today. So C is typically client experience and what that value proposition means when they're about to do business with you. E is for engagement, and O is for operational excellence. So from just a 30-second, 60-second snapshot, what do you feel is the client experience that people will get when they deal with William C. Davis Inc.?
Sincerity and a genuine understanding and caring of helping them get through whatever situation they feel like that they are facing. It doesn't do any good if I'm not invested in feeling what they're feeling, right? And I need to be able to do that, and I do that by listening, asking penetrating questions, and then allowing them to explain. One thing I've always hated is when you're talking, you can tell somebody's not listening because they're formulating in their mind what they're going to say next, right? That's not listening. That's bad form. That's just bad form. So I listen, and regardless of whether I think it's important or whether I think it's pertinent, it is to them. And so to the degree that it's important to them, it's important to me.
Hmm, great. So now, William C. Davis, right? Engagement. I'm
Yeah.
always curious you talk about leadership today, and that's kind of your main forte, your main message. How do people um, want to engage with you? How do you like to engage with others? Maybe from dinners or retreats or something. What is one of the ways that you feel has been your superpower of engaging with others?
Well, it goes back to I want to be in the environment that makes them comfortable, right? I don't want to be, saying, oh, well, let's come in my office and sit down and talk. Let's go to the boardroom, sit down and talk or whatever. What makes them comfortable? What allows them to open up, relax, share with me, right? And so, hey, you pick the time, you pick the place, you pick the, format, I'm there. It doesn't matter to me because again, I'm there to help. And the way that you help is by gathering the most information. The way you gather the most information is by the person being comfortable sharing.
Super nugget there, Go for Zero
Yep.
community. Listen and repeat that last 30 seconds. That was gold. So, operational excellence. What are some tools? I know you talked about the 3 or 4 AI tools. Anything else that's helping you stay kind of on schedule? Obviously, maybe an assistant. What are you using as far as operational excellence for the business?
I have a virtual assistant that works with me, and they're responsible for doing a lot of initial contact or outreach to companies. And we talk about once, twice a week, and then he sends me a lot of information through emails. Um, I'll tell you one of the things that I do, particularly on LinkedIn. There's a lot of boards, leadership boards that I'm a part of that I'll go through and I'll read posts and kind of get an understanding of what maybe people are thinking or things that have happened to then try to step back and say, hey, does that fit into what work I'm doing?
Okay. I love it. I love it. I mean, and again, this is formulating day by day.
Yeah,
It's a new venture for you, and
yeah, every
so
day.
it's really cool to hear that you it's not easy sometimes to involve your spouse and to have that mindset. But kudos to you. You've built a great life so that at this point of your life, it's about giving back, about understanding where you could fit, about sharing the real knowledge, about getting that book out there at the Congress Library, U.S. Congress Library of Congress, and those types of things. So, really excited to have you on. Thank you for making the time, and looking forward to over the next 6, 18, 12, 24 months, what's next. So I appreciate you having on. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you and, connect with you if they are looking for your leadership, counsel?
Yeah, I have a website, williamcdavis.net, williamcdavis.net. And at the bottom of every page has every link that you can reach me at, whether it be Instagram, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, so forth. You can reach me through that.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, Go for SEAL community, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed just yet, and check out the book, The 4A Formula: Untangle Any Challenge and Think Like a CEO, on your Amazon Kindle audio and paperback. And then the two books that William C. Davis. Can you share the two books, the titles?
The first one is called How to Lead Without Just Managing. And then the second one is Building Genuine Relationships.
I love it. I love it. So maybe next, yes, we'll literally get into building genuine relationships, because I have some philosophies and things that have worked, and building a COI network and those types of things. But I'd love to dialogue with you and have you back on. So thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime, John. I've really enjoyed this. Thanks for having me on.